never forget the smell of that day. The sharp metallic tang of cold aluminum mixed with the acrid, stale scent of aviation fuel that never seemed to fully leave your clothes. I was standing there on the tarmac at RAF Chelveston, freezing my ass off in the pre-dawn chill of December 1944, looking up at the nose of my B-24, the extra joker. The ground crew chief, a wiry kid from Ohio named Frankie, had just finished painting the latest tally on her fuselage. 73 missions, a lucky number, I thought. But luck, I'd soon learn, is a cruel mistress in this war. A commodity traded in blood and wreckage. I look back on that day and the question still echoes in the deepest parts of my soul. Was I wrong? Was I truly wrong for simply following the orders given to me? For trusting the technology I was told was infallible, even when every gut feeling screamed no? Tell me, honestly, if you were me with the lives of 10 men behind you and a piece of equipment promising to end the war, would you have done the exact same thing? The war had been going on too long. For me, it had been a relentless grind of high-altitude terror and bone-aching fatigue since the summer of '43. I was Captain Jake Riley, pilot of the Extra Joker, a veteran of the 482nd Bomb Group, the brave and the bold. We were the lucky ones, the ones who kept coming back. And by late '44, we were the old hands, the ones the fresh-faced replacements looked up to with a mixture of awe and pity. My crew was family. Lieutenant Benny Kincaid, my co-pilot, a steady rock who'd chew gum through a flak burst. Sergeant Tex Walker, the lanky, perpetually cheerful radio operator, and Staff Sergeant Billy Ray Johnson, our tail gunner, who'd seen more German fighter attacks than any man should. But the most important man that day, the man whose actions would decide our fate, was our new bombardier, Lieutenant Arthur Finch. Arthur wasn't supposed to be on this mission. Our regular bombardier, a sardonic New Yorker named Sal, had finally gotten his compassionate leave. His wife had just given birth to twins. Arthur, fresh out of training school in Florida, was the last-minute replacement, a man who seemed to have stepped straight out of a textbook. He was meticulous, almost painfully so, and his confidence bordered on arrogance, mainly because he was a product of the new era. He was one of the few who had been specifically trained on the Norden Mark 15, the new generation bombsight, the one that the brass claimed could put a bomb in a pickle barrel from 20,000 feet. It was a secret weapon, they told us, a marvel of electromechanical wizardry that was going to change everything. Our mission that day was a routine deep strike into Austria, a manufacturing plant near Linz, a critical target for German tank production. Routine. That word is a joke in wartime, isn't it? The briefing room was tense. Major Harrison, a man whose face seemed permanently etched with worry lines, pointed to the target on the massive wall map. "Linz, gentlemen," he barked, his voice echoing in the stale air.
Manufacturing Complex Dora. Primary objective, destroy the main assembly line.
Secondary objective, test the operational efficiency of the Mark 15. Lieutenant Finch, he turned to Arthur, who stood a little straighter. "This is your show. You'll be the lead bombardier for the entire squadron. The fate of this mission, and arguably the success of the new Norden, rests on your ability to hit that target precisely. Remember the rules of engagement. Absolutely no deviations. Hit the target and only the target." Arthur just nodded, his eyes bright with a mixture of excitement and seriousness that frankly made me uneasy. He was so focused on the machine, on the science of bombing, that I worried he'd forgotten the humanity of it. We strapped into the Extra Joker as the first sliver of weak winter sun began to paint the sky. The big Pratt & Whitney engines roared to life, shaking the massive frame of the Liberator. The cold inside the fuselage was immediately replaced by the intense vibration and the smell of hot oil. As we taxied out, Benny leaned over the center console, his breath clouding in the freezing air. "Think Finch can handle being the lead, Skip?" he asked, his voice a low rumble over the intercom. I sighed, pulling my goggles down. "He's got the golden ticket, Benny. The Mark 17. They treat that thing like it's the Holy Grail. We just fly straight and keep the wings on." The flight over the Channel and into continental Europe was, for a time, just that. Routine. We climbed to altitude, the air thinning and the temperature dropping to 30 °C. The oxygen masks hissed. The steady drone of the engines became a monotonous background noise, and all I could see out the windscreen was the vast, empty blue of the upper atmosphere. Then the trouble started, as it always does. About an hour from the initial point, the IP, the point where we'd turn toward the target and the bomb run would officially begin, Tex's voice crackled over the intercom, tight with urgency. "Skip, I'm getting a high-priority encrypted message from Control. They're rerouting the 441st and the 443rd. Heavy fighter activity reported near the Linz sector, but as they're telling us, the 442nd to maintain course. We are the priority payload. They explicitly say 442nd proceed as planned. Priority Alpha is non-negotiable." I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. Splitting up the formation was an invitation to disaster, but Major Harrison's words echoed in my mind. Absolutely no deviations. Priority Alpha is non-negotiable. "Roger that, Tex," I responded, trying to keep the doubt out of my voice. "Benny, we hold course. Finch, you copy? We are going in alone." Arthur's voice was calm, almost unnervingly so. "Copy, Captain. The Mark 15 is locked on. My calculation is already factoring in the wind shear and the projected flak trajectory. The machine doesn't care if we're alone. That was the problem with him. And maybe with the whole damn war, treating human tragedy as a solvable equation. We hit the IP, and I banked the extra joker into the final straight and level run. My hands were glued to the yoke, fighting the air currents, trying to make the platform as stable as possible for Arthur. Down in the plexiglass nose, he was hunched over the Norden, a small dark shape silhouetted against the blinding white of the bomb bay doors. The flak started immediately, a black oily cloud blossoming around us, punctuated by the angry red flash of explosions. The whole plane shuddered with the impact of near misses. It was a baptism of fire for Arthur, but he didn't falter. "Steady, Captain, steady." His voice was a flat monotone. "I need 100% straight and level. I've got the primary target in my sights, but then I saw it. I saw a landmark flash by that shouldn't have been there. It was a large, distinctive water tower. One I'd been trained to recognize, but it was at least 20 miles south of where it should have been relative to our projected course to Linz. My blood ran cold. "Finch." "Hold up!" I yelled, my voice cracking with panic. "I think we're off course. Look at your map reference. That water tower is not the Linz sector." Arthur didn't hesitate. "Negative, Captain. The Mark 15 is in control. I'm following the sight line it has generated. It has factored in all variables and determined the optimal drop point. Trust the machine. I'm dropping in 20 seconds. 10,000 pounds of high explosives are about to be put right where they need to be." I felt my heart pounding against my ribs. My training, my intuition, my 2 years of survival told me we were in the wrong place. The landscape below was flatter, less industrial than I expected. But Arthur, the man with the secret weapon, was adamant. He was the lead bombardier. The major had said, "Absolutely no deviations. Trust the new technology." I had 10 men counting on me, and every second I deviated, the more vulnerable we became to the fighters that were certainly scrambling toward us. I had to make a choice between the word of the military's genius machine and my own terrified intuition. I didn't deviate. I held the extra joker straight and level. I was a professional soldier, and I had been ordered to trust the chain of command and the superior technology. "Holding steady, Finch," I choked out. "Your call." "Bombs away," he announced with a chilling lack of emotion. The extra joker lifted immediately as the 10,000-pound load left the bay. We banked hard and dove for the deck, the priority now being escape and survival. As we turned, I saw the explosion. It wasn't the pinpoint strike I was expecting. It was a massive, terrifying blanket of destruction. Spreading across the ground, a plume of smoke and fire rising to meet the sun. I felt a fleeting, horrible sense of relief that the mission was complete. We had survived. We had hit the target. But what had we hit? It wasn't until we were halfway over the Adriatic, safe from fighters, that Tex came forward, holding a crumpled piece of paper that was part of the original encrypted message. "Skip," he whispered, his face ashen. I didn't have time to decrypt this part before the drop. It was a clarification on the priority message. The original message, the one that rerouted the other squadrons, was followed by this. 422nd, due to severe weather at Linz, new target designated, Wells Freight Yards. Coordinate changes south-southwest 25 miles from original IP. Acknowledge and confirm new target with Finch. Priority Alpha remains non-negotiable at Wells. Wells. Wells was an industrial area, but it also held a huge refugee camp that had been hastily set up near the freight yards. The water tower I had seen? It marked the edge of Wells, not Linz. In the confusion, the urgency of the mission, and the blind faith placed in the new Norden Mark 15, Arthur had only focused on the coordinates for a priority target that the machine was sighting. He had not waited for the decrypted clarification that the target itself had shifted from the Linz manufacturing complex to the Wells freight yards. The machine, designed for pinpoint accuracy, had been pointed at the wrong map, or rather the wrong section of the map. Finch had fed the system the original Linz coordinates. The machine had found the optimal solution for that original target, and it was I, the pilot, who had failed to override the system when my gut told me something was terribly wrong. I was supposed to be the failsafe. I was supposed to be the man who put human judgment over cold steel, and I had failed. I had allowed the machine to drop 10,000 pounds of high explosives on what I later learned was the primary aid distribution center of the entire Wells refugee camp, the adjacent school, and the housing blocks right next to the freight yards. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice, or rather, I had made a choice, a terrible, world-altering one. I was the captain who had trusted a machine over his own eyes, who had prioritized a secret mission objective over the sanctity of human life. The weight of that decision has never left me. Before I tell you what happened next, what I decided to do once we were safely back on the ground, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have owned up to the confusion, potentially facing a court-martial and disgrace, or worse, putting the entire blame on a new recruit and his experimental piece of equipment? Would you have allowed the narrative to be controlled by the very people who sent you on the mission? Or would you have fought to tell the truth, knowing the cost? We landed back at Chelveston in a silence colder than the stratosphere. The other squadrons were already home, having hit the freight yards at Wells successfully, their reports painting a confusing picture of a large, secondary explosion they couldn't account for, an explosion that matched our time of attack. Major Harrison was waiting for us, his face a thundercloud. He pulled me immediately into his office. Arthur Finch was already there, meticulously cleaning the lenses of the Norden. "Riley," the major started, his voice dangerously low. "Your mission report is contradictory. The other pilots report hitting the Wells yards. You report hitting what appears to be a completely different target, well south of the assigned area, though the bombsight photos confirm a massive explosion." "What the hell happened, Captain?" I looked at Arthur. He was calm, focused on his machine. He hadn't even looked up at me. "Sir," he said without being asked. "The Mark 15 performed perfectly. I input the coordinates provided in the initial briefing for the priority alpha target. The machine compensated for the unexpected weather patterns and fighter activity, and delivered a 98% probability of success on the target. The mission was a complete success from a technological standpoint. He called the carnage a technological success. The sheer arrogance, the complete and utter denial of the obvious miscalculation, finally broke me. I looked at the major and then I looked at Arthur, and I knew what I had to do. The only thing that would save not just my crew's reputation, but the secret of the Norden's failure. The war was at a critical stage. The brass wouldn't dare admit that their secret weapon had been used to commit a massive atrocity. Admitting the truth would mean a court-martial for me, disgrace for the 442nd, and potentially the grounding of a piece of equipment they believed would turn the tide of the war. It was a choice between my honor and the war effort. "Major," I said, my voice steady, my heart breaking, "the Norden Mark 15 is an incredible piece of equipment, and Lieutenant Finch followed every procedure to the letter. I am responsible for the flight path. I had a momentary lapse in judgment due to heavy flak. We took some damage to the stabilizer, and I couldn't hold the course perfectly. I was fighting the plane, and in the confusion I let the plane drift south. Finch had the priority alpha target locked in, and when I gave the bombs away call, he was dropping on the closest valid industrial target that the Norden could compensate for, given my drifting. The impact zone was an industrial storage facility near Wells that was not on our map, but it was certainly a legitimate military target. It was a lie, a beautiful, horrible lie. I took the blame for the navigation error, blaming it on flak and plane damage, which were all things that were plausible and difficult to disprove, especially with the successful bomb run as evidence. I protected Arthur Finch not because I liked him, but because the truth would have been worse for the Allied effort. Arthur was a pawn, and the Norden was the real problem, a piece of technology that was too good at doing the wrong thing. The major looked at me, scrutinizing every line on my face. He knew I was lying, I think. He knew me too well. But the lie was clean, contained, and most importantly, it protected the narrative. I see, Captain. Navigation error. Damage to the stabilizer. Very well. The records will show a successful but off-target strike on a secondary industrial facility. The matter is closed. You and your crew are grounded for a week for R&R. Finch, he turned to the young lieutenant. You are transferred immediately to the development unit back in the States to provide feedback on the Mark 15th. Congratulations, Lieutenant. Your data will be invaluable. And that was the final twist of the knife. Arthur Finch was rewarded, given a promotion, and shipped back as a hero of technology. He never knew, or maybe he did know and simply chose to ignore the magnitude of the disaster he had caused. My crew, to their credit, backed my story, their loyalty unwavering, though Benny looked at me with an unspoken question in his eyes for weeks. We were given a week's rest, a medal for a successful strike, and the weight of a horrific secret. The aftermath was a silent, creeping horror. Years later, after the war ended, I read the declassified reports and my worst fears were confirmed. The bombing of the Wells refugee camp was classified as a tragic, unavoidable error caused by severe navigational malfunction during heavy flak. The number of civilian casualties was staggering, mostly women, children, and the elderly. The Mark 15 was hailed as a breakthrough and quickly became the standard. Arthur Finch became a celebrated engineer in the post-war military-industrial complex. And I was a war hero, a man who had guided his crew through 73 missions, a man who had been just damaged enough to make a mistake that killed hundreds. The extra joker finished the war, was flown back, and ended up in a scrapyard, her tally of successful missions a permanent, damning record. I carry that day with me everywhere I go. The smell of the aviation fuel, the cold aluminum, and the sickening feeling of holding a plane straight while a lie was being cemented into history. I was not wrong for following orders, no, but I was terribly, fundamentally wrong for not trusting the man I had become over the machine I was told to serve. I let a piece of metal and glass overrule the humanity that was supposed to be the core of my duty. I chose the needs of the war over the demands of my soul. I often wonder about the families in Wells, and I hope somehow they know that one American pilot knew the truth. This is the kind of story that doesn't make it into the history books. It's the kind of story that lives in the quiet, sleepless hours of a man who survived. The war wasn't just fought with bombs and bullets. It was fought with lies, with technology we didn't understand, and with the terrifying burden of choices made in a split second. I told you my truth, the one I buried for decades. I told you about the mix-up, the new bombsight, and the twist of fate that turned a routine mission into a tragedy. Like this video if you were on my side, the side of the pilot who fought a losing battle against a technological lie. Subscribe for more stories like this, the forgotten, messy truths of history that they tried to erase. And please share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. Was I justified in my lie to save the war effort? Or should I have told the truth regardless of the cost? I'll see you all in the next story.